everyone. Welcome to the Across the Park podcast. Myself, Judgy and Pricey, in what feels like the morning after the night before. It's not quite the case, but it's been a long few days dwelling over the outcomes of Saturday's game against Southampton. We're recording here on Monday night, and again 2 days after Everton's latest home defeat to Southampton, and another chapter in this what's looking like a pretty disastrous season for the club and this team. So we've chewed over what the content of tonight's episode should be. There's loads of ways you could have gone about it. And we've decided, due to the outstanding reaction we've had on social media, across YouTube, Twitter and our website. I say outstanding because it's great to get feedback from our subscribers, our listeners, our viewers. And there's some very strong opinions and some very deep and meaningful, points that people have made. So we decided to air those points. To put it into context, it was obviously difficult to get everyone's out there. We had nearly 200 comments on our instant match reaction and about 50 or 60 tweets or messages today when we asked for questions on social media. So we've tried our best to create the most balanced picture of our subscribers and listeners as possible. And again, but thank you to everyone who has commented and left the feedback. It does make our shows a lot easier because we can actually create that balance, but also we've got a lot more variety to the opinions as well. Before we get into it, Pricey, we're going to display the questions this week visually for anyone who is watching. If you are listening, we will be reading the questions or comments out. Anything from you, Pricey, before we get into it?
No. I mean, I think the questions we had in the comments we had were, as always, they range in different opinions, and people think, certain people think one thing and others totally disagree, and that's what it's all about. It's all about having that discussion. So even today, when we're answering questions, it's a debate, isn't it? So it always is, especially when it's this type of predicament and it's going as badly as it is. There's no right answer, and I think that's being proven. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's see what comes of it, and good luck.
Yeah, same here. Okay, right, here we go then. So the first one, we haven't put the full question up there. I do know it's from one of our oldest and loyal listeners. It's Nick Morris. So this is his message. Happy New Year. Great to have you back. There's one reason I am not Lampard out. It's the fact that the board and Thelwell don't have my trust to replace him with the right man. Do you think sticking with Frank is too much of a risk, or does my point make sense? Pricey, I'll give this one to you first and foremost.
Yeah, I get the point about whether the board or Thelwell or whoever it is, probably Mashiri, will pick the right replacement if they do get rid of Lampard. And I'd hate to say that the manager is the answer. And I've thought about this a lot over the last week, particularly after the Southampton game and yesterday, just wondering what I actually do think about it. And unfortunately, my opinion is that Lampard's a bit out of his depth, if I'm honest. I think he'll probably, if you had an honest conversation with him, he'd probably say similar to himself. I just thought he's never been in this situation. Obviously, as a manager, as a player, he spent the majority of his playing career at Man City and Chelsea and Man City, fighting for titles. So he's never really been in this situation, and I think he's struggling with it. I do think he's struggling with it. I think going back to Southampton, and I'm going a bit off point maybe here, but the Lampard situation. Looking at Southampton, we really had to win the game, but we couldn't lose, and then that was the important thing for me, is not losing. And what I'm not seeing Lampard do is finding answers to not lose games. He doesn't seem to have that ability to set his team up to say we're not losing. No, there's the odd exception, as there always will be, but generally, especially at home, he's not. I'm not saying play for the point, but at least get the point. And I think, you're looking at, will he be trusted to bring in the right manager? Probably not. He probably couldn't trust him. They've tried this young manager, up and coming manager, and try and give him time and all that. And you got to commend them to a certain point for trying that with the new director of football to come in. But there's a lot at stake, and my opinion, and we'll talk about it later, is that with a heavy heart, I just don't think he's got it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and put that into a little sentence, which I think you were getting at, and well, my perception of it is, I think in this situation, the manager needs to make difficult calls, and those difficult calls aren't always popular ones with the fans at the time. We've seen it in the past. Moyes get booed for making changes, at a time when maybe things were tough. We've certainly seen it when Allardyce was in charge and making changes and picking teams that were not popular and that we're not going to win any awards for entertainment. But he took the pressure off the players by making them calls. And I think Saturday, and I think back even more so to the Wolves game, there were moments in that game where he had to make the right call for them players and for the club. And just as you say, take the points. That game on Saturday was getting away from us. If you don't think you've got the options on the bench, we've got a question about this later. If you don't think you've got the options on the bench to win that game, then you take the points and you go away and you keep us in a position where we're maybe not as vulnerable. That Wolves game, if he's done exactly the same, which we could have easily took a point out of that Wolves game, we're sitting in a much better position now with two teams in and around us that haven't picked up 3 points. So for that reason, for me, that's where I think the justification and potentially the time has come. But we will get into that more as we go along. I think both of us have answered that in a similar way, to be fair, Nick. Although, there's certainly a lack of trust in Thelwell on the board to replace it. I think that lack of trust is not as strong as the lack of belief in the current manager to make those difficult calls. Is that fair, Pricey?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and talking about making difficult decisions on the pitch, they might have to make a difficult decision in a manager as well, as they did with Allardyce at the time. Who knows? But we'll wait and see.
Definitely. Okay, so next one's coming up now. Just play this one through. Okay, so next message. Forgive me, I haven't got the name of this gentleman. As I say, we took your email out, so we've also lost the name in there, but you'll know who you are, and thanks for your message. If Everton is to sack Frank Lampard, who would you want to see replace him? We're cutting to the chase here, Pricey. I don't think large parts of the fan base would accept what we actually need, and that is Dyche or Allardyce. Would these appointments be met with such resistance that we'd end up back to square one? I'd like to add, I feel sorry for Frank Lampard, but the job is now too big for him. Well, it's a perfect follow-up to Nick's question. And as I say, he's cut to the chase. So, go on, Pricey. What's your thoughts on that? Do you want me to keep that question up for a moment?
No, it's all right. I think, I personally think where we're at this situation, it's not calling out for a long-term appointment. It was like this time last season when Lampard came in, because we thought we'd get through the season and we can build. And I don't think it's calling out for that now. I think it's calling out for a 2 to 3 year appointment, or maybe just an appointment until Mashiri's sold up, whenever that might be. Someone who's going to stabilise us, just get us, keep us in the Premier League to start with, and then just make us a difficult to beat Premier League team in the same way that Moyes did when he first came in. He wasn't coming in as I know he'd done all right at Preston, but you wouldn't say he was like a brilliant manager or anything when he come in. But he proved himself. But he was back to basics. And I think my opinion is Sean Dyche would be a good appointment. And there might be people who completely disagree with that. I think it's a good appointment. And you put him in the same bracket there as Allardyce is in. He's a firefighting, keep teams up type of manager, and he was to a certain extent because it was Burnley. But the stuff what he done with Burnley. You look at Eddie Howe at Bournemouth, and I'm not saying he's the same type of manager as Howe, but you look at the achievement he had with Bournemouth is similar to what Dyche had with Burnley. You can only take that type of club so far, and he's never been in a situation where he's had a big club to manage. So I think it might not be a popular choice, but you don't always get what you want. Sometimes it's a bit of desperation, and that's what we need to bring in. But I think Dyche is a good manager. I've said that for a while. I don't think there'd be any. Bringing Dyche in would be the sensible choice. Should put it that way.
Yeah, look, I can't disagree with a lot of the things you said there. I think particularly the point you make about Dyche's stock, so to speak, and the fact that he's inherited the reputation, which is probably a little bit unfair. I mean, one of my closest colleagues in work is a Burnley season ticket holder, and he acknowledged that, do you know what? I don't think Burnley were ever able to give Sean Dyche what he really wanted in terms of the funds and the resources to be able to build the type of team that he was maybe capable of shaping. It was always having to deal with selling the best assets, kind of just trying to find bargain basement buys a lot of the time. I think the only criticism they had, so to speak, was when he did have a little bit of money, he went out and bought, Weghorst, who, look, he's gone to Man United now on loan, so you can't say it was a bad signing. He bought in Cornet and Weghorst, and they ended up in almost the worst position. So, look, I think there's definitely a lot of sense to what you're talking about, and I keep looking at what's the lesser evil here. A Dyche, or, you mentioned Moyes. There's every chance that Moyes is going to be unemployed in the next few weeks. So a Dyche or a Moyes, whether you put them into the same box or not, I think they both fall into the category, to be fair, of a 2 or 3 year manager who's probably going to be capable of stabilising the club and the team in general.
If you look at his CV, going back to that, he can set a team up to not lose, or to, not necessarily to go and play great football, but to not lose games. You can get the best out of average players. He's done that for years at Burnley. We've got a lot of average players in our squad. He can get his CV proved that he can get the best out of those type of players. He's got it in terms of he's tried and trusted. He's done it before. That's what I'm saying about Lampard. He's never been in this situation before, and I feel a bit sorry for him. But that's just a fact of the situation.
Yeah, and you know what, you're spot on there. I think a lot of the fan base do feel sorry for Lampard, and I think the reason being, and you just touched on it then, is we were bringing in Lampard, making the assumption that we were going to make decent enough signings to give him the right resources to work with, and to be able to play a certain brand of football and certain style of football, that you'd win a few, you'd lose a few, but we're not going to be in danger either way. We haven't, for one reason or another, whether it's him, whether it's Thelwell, we haven't got the players in to enable him to do that. And we've still carrying a lot of players that are able to do that. So if you're not that manager who can work with basic players and kind of get blood out of a stone, then we need to get someone who can potentially do that. So no, that's fair. We'll move on because we've got quite a bit to cover, but I think it's clear, certainly from Pricey's standpoint, that Dyche is the man. I'm not really disagreeing with that. I don't want to sit on the fence here. I certainly believe we should be replacing Frank Lampard, and unlike Pricey, I haven't actually got an answer as to who that person is, but I definitely am not in a position to disagree with what Pricey's just said then. So moving on and try and get through this a bit quicker. So the next one we've got, we're moving on to tweets now. And this is from JEFC 18_1878, James, obviously his name is. Where's a football club do we go from here? Clear division throughout the club and fans, a board whose positions are now untenable, an owner who couldn't care less. Do we just accept relegation now as an inevitable? I mean, I don't think we're quite at the stage. And you know what? Let me just give a slight bit of sprinkling of positivity here and context. We're 18 games into the season. I know it's the end of January, or coming to the end of January, and it feels like it's a lot further. But in a normal season, this would be 2 weeks before Christmas. So it's not, I don't think it's beyond, I don't think it's at that point yet. And we've also got to consider that there have been stages this season where we have been in the top half, small parts of the season, early in the season. We haven't been in the relegation zone for more than a couple of weeks right now. So I don't think we're quite at that stage where we accept relegation as an inevitability from my point of view, Pricey.
But we never accept relegation. I'd never, ever in a million years ever say, let's accept relegation. I get what he's saying, but no chance to. And that's why we've never been relegated from the Premier League, because we don't accept relegation as a fan base and as a club. It's something we just don't do. So no chance. What do we do from here? What do we do from here? We just go back to basics, as I said. My opinion is it's not a time to be taking risks. It's a time to go back to basics, get a manager who can come in. And I'm going on about the manager, and as I say, I do feel bad for saying replace the manager, but that is my opinion. Bring a manager in who's just going to go back to basics, try and stay up is the first and foremost. That's what we do. We just go back to basics and try and stay up and go from there. And it is a little bit of, as I said, it's short-term plans for the time being. I know we've got the stadium coming up and everything, but we've got to be short-term. We've got to be 2-year blocks, right? What are we doing for the next 2 years? We're going to make sure we're in the Premier League. When they get to the new stadium in the Premier League, we're going to get this financial fair play in order if we can, by bringing in players who we might not necessarily want to Everton, but a manager who can get the best out of them, and be pragmatic about it. Understand as a fan base that's where we are at the minute. It's not where we want to be, but it's where we are. That's where I think we go, and that's where I think we do.
Yeah, and in short, for me, in the absence of a competent owner and board, which I think everyone at the fan base can agree on, we need a strong manager, and we need a manager who can navigate these waters. So I think to answer that first question, without putting names to it, like Pricey's bravely done, and again, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with him. We need a manager who can navigate these waters, and that, for me, should help us avoid the bottom one of relegation. I'm not saying it's off the cards, by the way. I'm not saying it's going to guarantee survival, because there's a lot more to battle with than just the manager. But if you work your way down, owner not competent, whatever we say, board, is not performing its function. That level there, management down, we've got to just try and get right. And I think if we get the right manager in for this period of time, I think we can avoid relegation. But I think that's got to be done at this moment in time.
Yeah, and the main issue there is the owner, isn't it? Because the owner's got the final say on everything. I know you hear the rumours that Ken Wright's got his say and whatever. The owner's got the final say. So you need. We all know he wants to sell the club, so nothing's going to change drastically in that sense. The board's not going to be replaced as much as you want them to. You'd like strong board members who will stand up to an owner eventually, but obviously you've got to have the right owner to start with, and that's not going to happen overnight. So it is a case of just making do and doing the best, and as I say, back to basics until that comes.
I think the one consolation, going back to your point there, and we will move on in a sec, he's selling the club, and the reason I say that's a consolation is it's all about value. For someone selling the club, he doesn't want a club that's is going to be relegated to the Championship in one way or another. So that's the only consolation we've got. Whatever advice he takes right now, it's got to be to try and get someone in who maintains a shred of value in the club, and that's got to be by staying in the Premier League. So we've got to take that again as some sort of positive. So moving on to the next one, as I say, we've got some tweets in here as well. Go on, Pricey. You want to say something?
No, I was going to say go on, fire through them.
So how many of the summer signings made by Lampard and Thelwell would you re-sign? So I guess that's saying, like, if we had the chance to sign these players again, would you sign them? I mean, let's go through them then. We'll start with the easy ones, I guess. Dwight McNeil.
No, I mean, this sounds harsh going through the players, but no, I wouldn't have.
No, the only way to do it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, Dwight McNeil, no. Maupay is the next one, I suppose.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Maupay, no. Both no's for me for different reasons. We don't need to go into detail there anymore. Anana.
Yeah, I think there's a player in Anana, definitely. I think he showed on Saturday as well that he's got a bit about him as well.
Completely agree. The next two, again, I'm fairly confident with them, but again, it's anyone's opinion. Tarkowski.
Yeah, Tarkowski. Yeah, bring him in. He was a recognised centre back, weren't he? When we brought him in, I think he's a proven Premier League centre half. Yeah,
agree. Connor Cody, loan signing, but
all day take Cody.
Absolutely. Who else have we got in there? Summer signings. I mean, Vinagre was a. Do we even need
really see him? I mean, but then the question, I suppose, comes. Well, yeah, that's not the question. I was going to say, would you have brought in somebody to play as a left back and Michalenko as a sub? That's what I would have probably gone down. But that's not the question. The question is, would you resign? I haven't seen enough for him to say whether I would or not.
Yeah, I think I can't even think of anyone else we've signed of note. That's it, isn't it?
Not in the summer. I don't think so. No.
No.
Guy, obviously, that was.
Yeah, Guy. Sorry, yeah, that's a fair. Interesting one that I can't say I wouldn't re-sign him. Given the shape of our squad, he's certainly a much, one of the strongest squad players, isn't he? He's certainly not. You'd have to do well to replace him in the team. I guess that's a fair point to make.
He improved our midfield when he came in. I think if you're looking at next season, you'd hope that you bring in someone to replace him, and he will be a squad player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair. I think he's definitely a squad player in that. I think there's certain games in the season where you'd almost be first name on the team sheet just because there's going to be a lot of defending going on. But there's other games where, he leaves a lot to be desired, doesn't he, in terms of his other attributes. But I think that's an easier one to answer. But thanks, GP. I'm not sure what your name is, Gareth, Gaz, whatever, GP 1989. So you're a little bit younger than us, but not by much. So next one, going through the tweets. Okay, so this is a general 5. Do we believe the Denise Barrett Baxendale? We've got to be careful here from a legal standpoint, but I think we can have a bit of fun with this, so to speak. do believe the Denise Barrett-Baxendale headlock story. Personally, I think the board has no rebuttal of the fans' message. So all they've got left to try is to try and discredit the people sending the message. Just for the benefit of anyone, it's unlikely that you haven't heard the story, but the statement released by Everton is that Denise Barrett-Baxendale, our CEO, was put in a headlock by one of the Everton fans at a recent game. I believe it was after the Brighton game, or at some point during or after the Brighton game. Since the Evertonians, being the detectives and the cunning people that we are, have contacted Merseyside Police, of which Merseyside Police have said there was no report of such an assault, and the Echo have now basically said they haven't got any sources apart from Everton in relation to this supposed crime. Pricey, it's a bit of a bizarre one, isn't it? Where do you stand on? I'm not just going to ask you particularly about that. I'm going to ask you the question the listeners asked, but I'm also going to ask you what you feel about the club's recent comms, because that hasn't really come up as much in our questions, but it's related to this one.
This particularly, you mean, or you mean Machine on the radio, or what?
The comms around the club saying to telling the board not to, not only telling the board not to show up, but publicly saying that we've told the board not to show up because of the fans.
I'm skeptical. I'm not going to comment on whether it did or didn't happen. Yeah. What I don't like about it, or what makes me a little bit skeptical about it is if it did happen at the end of the Brighton game, why it only come in the paper the morning of the Southampton game, didn't, or the night before, I believe. So why wait until then, knowing that there's going to be a sit-in after the game? Why release that? Well, I might be wrong here. There might be people on Twitter who send messages, and there might be emails. I don't know, but that's it. It was quite clear from, we had the ESCON, it was quite clear from the communications that they were sending. It was a peaceful protest, so they might look. The board might have felt like they were in danger, or they might have felt like there was a threat to whatever the actual party line was. But I don't know. I'm skeptical about it. I'm skeptical about the timing of it. Why they had to release it in the paper? Why it came out on the day or the night before, whenever it was. It just all doesn't. It's got a bit of a smell about it, hasn't it? In my opinion, it might all be true. I'm not saying it's not, but it just showing the empty seats as well, where the board would sit. It was like Everton's way, the club's way of sending a statement without actually sending a statement, Joe, if that makes sense. Yeah, showing, look, empty seats, and it's because of X, Y, and Z. And as I say, whether you're for or against the protest, whether it happened or it didn't, it didn't feel like, it just felt something.
Do you know what?
A bit of miss for me.
It was bizarre. Like the reason I used the word bizarre is there've been a lot of clubs and fan bases in this country over the last 5 years, so when we're talking a short period of time, who've been very, very unhappy with their owners, and are very, very unhappy to the extent that people not showing up in games, throwing the season tickets on the pitch, having violent protests outside the game. I'm talking Newcastle fans, I'm talking West Ham fans more recently as well, I'm talking Arsenal fans, not as much Chelsea as Man United fans, wow. But have you ever heard a club come out with a statement to say, we've advised our board not to turn up at the game because of the fans? There's not a chance. And look, every fan base has got their fans that push it a little bit far, or, kind of go beyond what would be deemed to be acceptable messages to send to people over football. However, you're not telling me for a minute that any messages who've been received have not been in line with what the Newcastle fans have sent to Mike Ashley in the past, what the United fans have said to the Glazers, because we've seen it ourselves via social media and, via fans forums. There's no way that any of them were any worse than what has happened at those clubs. But I've never heard those clubs come out with anywhere near the comms that we've done, before that Southampton game. I just thought it was bizarre.
Yeah, same. It felt a bit weird, didn't it? And to say that they weren't safe, I don't know.
No, and maybe this whole,
it's a good way to stay away, isn't it? Knowing that there's going to be a sit-in, it's a good out for them, isn't it? To not turn up and not face the music. I'm not saying that that's the reason they done it, but if they didn't want to turn up and face the music, they had to think of something, didn't they?
Exactly, yeah. So the next tweet is alluding to it. So we won't go back into the Denise Barrett Baxendale thing, but I think it's fair to say that I think it's linked to the bizarre comms, and they both, we can't speculate whether it happens or not happen because we've got no evidence ourselves. But I think it's fair to say that they're both acutely linked. This one's again very similar, but what Phil's saying here, I'm calling you Phil. Sorry, it might be Philip, but I'm going to go for Phil. We're now at a Mexican standoff stage with the board. Should we reach out to Graham Sharp? So he's alluded again about the headlock. He's called the headlocker gate. But whether it's true or not, but he's basically asking the question now, or he feels, and many Evertonians might feel the same, that one of the people we can trust on the board is Graham Sharp. Should we reach out to him? Do we think Graham Sharp will comment? I mean, I don't know. Look, we could try ourselves to reach out to Graham Sharp. I'm fairly sure at this stage that, despite what we think and despite what a legend he is, and he always will be as a player, his allegiances right now are to the board and fellow board members of Everton FC. So I'm not sure how much joy we get in terms of trying to get an official line from Graham Sharp. And I'm pretty sure that official line would be influenced by the club. Pricey?
Yeah, I think it would be influenced by the club, certainly, because he's on the club's board. But he's a good a person as any, isn't he? To have that dialogue with. If you want to have dialogue with the board, he's the one you'd like to think the board Everton will put forward first of all. He's probably got the most, as he said there, he's idolised by us all and our dads and everyone else.
He's fans liaison officer as well. So
exactly. Yeah, so he's the man to do it, isn't he? I suppose, and I think the communication from Everton is an issue. I don't think it's, when you look at other clubs, I don't think it's like it's terrible. Personally, I don't think their communication's been awful, but around this situation, I think it has been lacking. And I think Graham Sharp will be the person, if the board wanted to present somebody to the fans to have that conversation, even if he is towing the party line, at least it's a face. At least we can have that conversation with him, or the fans groups can have that conversation with him. And try and just understand from their point of view what is going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I agree. Again, I think the listener was, or one of our followers on Twitter, Phil, was saying that I think Graham Sharp might be the man, and it's not a bad shout. I mean, I think a lot of us as fans have got ideas on how these comms should or could have happened, and we're a lot closer to what should have happened than maybe what the reality's been. But I don't think Graham Sharp's the worst person in the world, certainly, to be getting the message across. This one's come through our website, as you can see. It's from Danny Priest. And just to add, we've got that service still available. If you want to send a message to us via the website, you just go to acrossthepark.co.uk. There's just a contact button on there, and you can send a message to us directly. So we do get messages that way as well. Hello, lads. Opinion on Iwobi. My opinion is that 1 goal all season, 1 in over 1,800 minutes. Good match, Danny. Is as big a problem as anything we have. He's our attacking midfielder, and his output is so bad. I, like others, can see that since he's gone central, he's improved. But let's be honest. He's running around and playing the odd neat ball forward, really enough to warrant a new contract. I think we're kidding ourselves. Regards, Danny. Pricey?
I do agree. Not totally agree, but I do agree that his output's not good enough in terms of goals scored, and I haven't got his assists in front of me, but I don't see him assisting very much either. He does link play up, and he's always willing. He's always coming and showing, and he's probably one player who's not hiding when the pressure's on. But his output does need to be better. But it's not just his output that needs to be better. It's most of the attacking players, and I don't think they're being set up. I think they could be set up better in order to score more goals as a team. I think that's the issue. I think it's the tactics we're using, and it's the one-dimensional play that we've got, and I don't think Lampard really knows how to influence games from the side, or making those subs and changing formation. So going off a little bit on a tangent there, but my point is that, yeah, I do think Iwobi has improved. I do think he needs to do more, though. I don't think he's in an ideal world, you wouldn't warrant a place every week. You wouldn't be, you're definite every week. You'd be competition for him, and you'd rotate him. And as we said with Guy there, he'd be a good squad player who plays a lot, but isn't guaranteed his place. And he definitely needs to produce more. His numbers need to improve. But as I say, that goes for all our attacking players. Gray, Gordon, McNeil, they all need to improve in that.
Yeah, it's fair. Just to add a little bit of balance. So he's got 5 assists this season, which isn't bad at all, to be fair. Given it, I think he's probably certainly in the top 20 assists in the league, and he might not be far off the top 10 if I'm honest. But 5 assists isn't that bad. Albeit if you look at the last 10 games, I think it's 1 in the last 10 games. And I'm not sure if that goal that he got, which was a decent one, I'm not sure if that was in the last 10 games. But I know there's been a drop off. I do disagree with you, Pricey. I think there's the tactical side, which I think you've perfectly put there. But I think there's also a confidence issue in general in the team forwards. And I think when you are lacking confidence as a group, whether the manager is instructing you or whether you're working on things on the training grounds, bringing them to life on a Saturday is difficult when you're not playing well, or you're not really getting them goals, or you haven't got a forward up there who's finishing them. And as we've said with other people in the past, certainly, assisting or getting assists relies on someone putting them in, on the other end, doesn't it, as well? So you could be putting the best balls in the world, but if there's no one getting on the end of them, or that person not scoring them, then that's another factor. Look, I do think, and I think it briefly mentions it in the instant match reaction, I think Iwobi's getting away with it slightly because of his massive improvements of form. I wouldn't go as far as to say I wouldn't give him a new contract. I think that remains to be seen. I don't think we're in a position to not give him a new contract because we haven't got the funds to probably replace him. He is very versatile, which we're lacking. He very rarely gets injured, which is worth its weight in gold. And 5 assists so far isn't bad. So I'm not quite in that position yet, but I think that's where we are on that one. This is a long one, and again we are getting in on time already. But I think this is a Thelwell question more than anything else. Does he need to come out and address the fans? It's a communications again, I guess, Pricey, but he's speaking about the players we've mentioned before, who we wouldn't re-sign: Vinagre, Morpie, McNeil. Them signings, in his words, have put the team on life support. The manager's not even using them at home to Southampton, which says everything you need to know about recruitment once again in this summer. So he's saying, or the fan in summary, again, we took your name out because your email address was just below it. The fan is saying he feels that it's Thelwell who should be coming out and giving more of an explanation at this moment in time from a comms point of view. Just briefly thoughts on that, because we have covered some of the other.
I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. I don't know what other, and I might be wrong again. But I don't know what other club the director of football comes out and makes statements about signings. I'm not sure on that one personally. I think we spoke about the signings that we've had already, haven't we? So I think we need to touch on that. But I think Morpie and Vinagre were brought in to be squad players. I think McNeil's let us down. I think he was brought in as a first teamer. Starting 11, he's probably let us down more than the others. I think the other two were brought in as squad players, and that's what they are. And to beef up the squad as much as anything else.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that whether we should be expecting our director of football or to be coming out and justifying signings all the time. I think generally the way things work, and this happens businesses, companies, is that you put in that position of responsibility. You're accountable to your CEO, your boards, or whatever. You don't always go and explain why you've done something to the customers as well. Whether that's right or wrong is anyone's view, but I don't think that's any different at any other club. But there's no doubt, obviously, that there's been failures there once again. The next one's a tweet. How much do you think a different manager would get out of the squad? We kind of answered this, but thanks again, Lee, for your question. I still think we could have a more balanced formation and more attacking threat without the way Frank Lampard plays his 4-3-3. Thoughts on that, Pricey? Because I think it's an interesting one, and he's not far wrong given the point we've just made about Iwobi. Yeah,
and he has obviously changed his formation from that 4-3-3 recently after obviously it worked out in Man City. He went back to that for Wolves or whatever. But we're going to come to in a bit about our players and would you take our players over other clubs' players? And I'll say what I want to say in a bit, but I think you can get more out of this squad. I think you can. I think you can set them up better. I think you can, not only in the formation, but in how you play, the sort of patterns of play that we don't seem to have, the lack of ideas in match. I think he goes out with a way of playing and he sticks to it for 90 minutes, or generally he'll stick to it for 90 minutes. And if he does change it, it's the last 5 or 10 minutes when really he should, as fans, and he knows more about footy than us, let's face it, but as fans you can see from the sideline that it needs changing. Brighton game at half-time, perfect example. Wolves game, it needed changing. Everyone knew it, everyone around just saying he needs to change it. It's quite clear, but he seems to either not want to, or doesn't see it, or is not able to. So yeah, I do think personally that you can get more out of this squad. I do understand that there's players in that squad that are not good enough, but I do think you can get more out of the squad personally.
Yeah, I couldn't add any more. So that, to be fair, I touched on it briefly in the instant match reaction as well. And as you say, we'll come back to it a little bit more. Again, these are YouTube now, so we had a lot of comments on YouTube, but Pricey's picked out a few of the ones that are most relevant to the balance of it. So this is in relation to our instant match reaction. You're critical of Lampard, but who would you have brought off the bench and when? He rightly doesn't trust Gordon, Maupay and McNeil, which is an interesting point given that he brought Gordon off the bench. They aren't good enough. So again, I'll start with this one, Pricey, because you answered that last one. Who would you have brought? I actually made the point that a stronger manager, and maybe didn't say stronger manager in the instant match reaction, but I said it's not always about making changes just because the fans think you should make a change. I'm not sure. I think we get to a certain point in games under Lampard, whether that's his fault or whether it's lack of players taking responsibility on the pitch. We seem to get to a point every game with this Everton team where they just get lost and they kind of just hit a bit of a wall and there's nothing more coming back. But I think we've got enough at the back if you give them players responsibility, for the likes of Cozy and Tarkowski to go, okay, that's it. We shut up. We take what we've got and that's it. You kind of get the impression, certainly at home more than anything else, the players are looking for a bit of direction. Where are we going next? What's next? By Lampard taking off Seamus Coleman, putting on Anthony Gordon, that's a statement from the manager for me. That's it. We are going for this and we're going for the jugular. We're going to try and win this game. So you're saying he doesn't trust Anthony Gordon, and I'm talking directly to the follower here on YouTube. He not only is he entrusted Anthony Gordon, he sent the message out to his senior players that I'm taking our captain, our club captain off, a defender, trusted senior player, and I'm bringing on a young forward. I'm going to win this game. I'm bringing Ellis Sims off the bench. I know that was when we conceded the goal, but there was a message from him indirectly that we're going to try and win this game. I think in Saturday's case, and I certainly think in the case of the Wolves game, that was the wrong message. Sometimes it's better to either not make a change or to make the change that's right for that given situation and that game. You think back to the Wolves game, and he was critical of the fans for getting impatient and, get the ball forward. He made the statement before that as a manager by the changes he made that we were going for the win. The fans were trying to get behind that by saying, get the ball forward then. So, do you know what I mean? I think there's the discrepancies in the message he's sending out as a manager and what the players are able to produce at that time. And I think that's my take on it.
I agree. I'm not going to add any more to that. I agree with you. It's not always about either the changes of player. It's the change of formation, the change of what you do. You knock it long, what you do, how do you mix it up like you say. You're just happy to get the point or not happy to get the point, but you play for the point instead of going for it. Yeah, I agree.
Well, this is a long one. To cut to the chase, we need to change the manager ASAP. Damo thinks that, I say Damo, I'm assuming it's Damo. He thinks Wayne and Big Dunk, perhaps. It's a bit of only feels and horses about that, I think. In transitions, no counter press. Everton conceded poor goals. Up top, not scored enough. Basically saying again he likes Frank, but his body language is showing it's sunk somewhat, and I agree with that. Average group of players, and Anthony, to be fair, not a wing back. Seamus went off, lack of leadership. Godfrey moved it. He's obviously listing a catalogue of things that went wrong. His last point, confronting players after the match was out of line. We must stick together in times of crisis. So that I'm going to touch on that one briefly, and then the Duncan and Wayne. I'll level that to you on Pricey. What are your thoughts on Wayne and Duncan potentially being the answer?
No, not for me. It's not. As I said earlier on, it's not a time for risks. It's a time to try and go for. It's the same as the Allardyce situation a couple of years ago. It's time to go for someone who's got it in the CV, who's proven, who's been in this situation before. No, Duncan as a player and as an assistant, whatever, but not as a manager. So I get why he's saying it. The passion, bringing a bit of fight. Scout, both Scousers really, aren't they? But Evertonians who can come in and the one of us type of situation. I get it. I get why he's saying it, but for me, it'd be a massive risk. I'd prefer to go tried and tested.
Yeah, no, fair enough. We'll come back to the fans bit in a moment because there's one similar to this that's coming up in a moment. This is a Newcastle fan, so it was an interesting one. Saying he feels for us as Everton fans, James Slater. The club's been run terribly by higher-ups who simply just don't have a clue about football. A classic example of a club massively overspending, signings not being good enough, / not working, which is a big reason why you're in the predicament you're in now. Crippled by financial fair play with no wiggle room. That Moshiri has a lot to answer for. Your fans are owed an explanation. Listen, he's bob on. Very few people could disagree with that. He's obviously got experience of the highs and lows of spending and not spending money as a Newcastle fan. And I think it's fair to say that the current owners they put in place, they've entrusted people who know football and maybe know the game. They've got a clear recruitment strategy. And at the moment, who's to say it'll last forever, it's working very well for Newcastle, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's bringing in football people, but then trusting them. Not at the first sign of trouble. I know Steve Walsh was we can all agree was a mistake.
Mm.
But let's even go to Steve Walsh. But he's trusted him. He's brought him in. He's trusted him. He's given the tools of what he needs to perform. But then he's pulled the plug really early. He's done it with Marcel Brands. Brought him in. If you believe the rumours or whatever else, he hasn't allowed Marcel Brands to do the job that he's been brought in to do. So it's bringing in football people and then it's listening to them and understanding your limitations. I mean, that interview he done with talking about Moshiri, that interview he done on Talksport where he was. We've got rid of managers because the fans have wanted us to get rid of managers. That's not what you want. And you've got to be a leader. If you own a club, you've got to be a leader. And if you believe that a manager's a right manager, you've got to stick by it. And you might get a bit of stick, but you've got to believe it's coming around the other way. But that doesn't also explain why he brought in their managers in the first place. He must have listened to someone to bring in the manager in the first place. So he's no longer listening to them anymore. Or did he bring in managers that no one else wanted because he weren't listening to them in the first place? It just all stinks of someone who just got his head in the clouds, basically. And he doesn't need me to say it, does it? But he's completely cocked it up, hasn't he? Let's face it.
Yeah, and again, we've said the same about Lampard, and you know what? I think you agree with this. Most Everton fans would. It's not that maybe Moshiri didn't have the right intention. You can't say he hasn't got the right intention because he's put his money in, but it's misdirected. It's the same as Lampard. You can't say he's got the wrong intention. You can see he cares, but he's just a little bit out of his depth now. Moshiri is a successful businessman in his own right, but in this particular, in these circles, he's out of his depth, and he's clearly shown that. But yeah, it again stinks of a lack of accountability, which seems to be a thread at the moment, whether it's board, manager, or even players as well. But thanks for your points, James, because again, good context coming from Newcastle fan. A guy, I believe he was disagreeing with.
It was me saying I said Everton's man for man. I'd rather have Everton's team than Southampton's team and Wolves and Brighton's team man for man. And I've thought about it, and because a couple of people disagreed, I think there might be another one disagreeing as well. But I stand by what it was. The point I was trying to make was that ability wise, I would take our 11 over their 11 any day of the week. You got Pickford, you got Connor Cody, Ben Godfrey, Onana. You've got Tarkowski. Calvert-Lewin. He getting a lot of other teams there. Looking at them against Southampton's 11, I don't think we're worse players than us. They're better players than us. Obviously, you're saying you've got Ward-Prowse. Obviously, Ward-Prowse one of the best midfielders in the league. They're going to have. I'm not saying every one of our 11 is better than every one of their 11. got Walker's Peters at left back, I'd take it all day as well. So I'm not saying that our 11's better than his. What I am saying is that our 11 players are not performing. Yeah, they're not performing. And when I think about how it is, it's, my opinion is, it's the way they're being set up, it's the tactics they're being given, but it's the pressure of playing for Everton. Players can go and perform at Brighton, they can go and perform at Wolves, they can go and perform at Southampton. With the greatest respect, the pressure of playing at Goodison Park is not the same as playing for those clubs. And there's players who can't handle pressure of playing at Goodison. We're a passionate fan base. We'll let them know if they're not doing well, good enough. And that's fine, we're allowed to do that. But we'll also back them to the hilt if we need to. Proved that last season, it's proved it in years gone by. But I think we're lacking players who can handle the pressure. And that's what I think is the bottom line. As I say, there's all other parts of it. So it's a multi-thing, it's tactical and whatever else. But that's what I'm saying, is that talent-wise, they're no better talent-wise than us. We're just not performing for whatever reason. Confidence is a thing. But I think a big thing of it is at Goodison Park, the pressure just gets to the players, or gets to a lot of the players. And I think it cripples them. I think that's a massive issue.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. I mean, the first player that comes to mind, and I'm not saying this guy is blessed with as much talent as some of the other players we could talk about, but Michael Keane, look at lockdown when there was no fans there, and he looked like one of the best defenders in the league. We also had, Ancelotti at the time, but looked a very solid defender, and he was a very solid defender at Burnley, but he has literally been a classic example of someone who cannot face it when the going gets tough and under the immense pressure of playing for a big club. And he's certainly not the only one in our squad. I'm with you on it. I don't think we've got the worst 11 in the league. I do agree we're lacking, world class. Calling James Ward-Prowse world class is a little doubtful, but he's certainly a class player, and he's a player who can change a game with a moment. He's got a particular. Sounds like talking about, what do you call it here? I was going to say particular set of skills that Liam Neeson, he's got a particular set of skills, but his ability to put that ball on a sixpence from anywhere on the pitch, whether it be in the top bin or on a centre forward's head or a defender's head from corners, is a unique skill, and it's something we haven't got in our squad. But I think man for man, if you were to go through Southampton's 11 and our 11 the other day, I think we would come out on top, if our players were playing at the best. And that's the big problem at the moment. And as you say, whether that's the manager's fault, whether it's the players floundering, something's got to be done about that.
Yeah, they've got to do better. I'm not for one second saying they performed or not. They've got to do better. They've got to. But talent-wise and ability-wise, we should be doing. We're not a bottom three team.
I don't think so. And I think going back to, I can't remember which one it was, whether it was a tweet or whatever, it was a listener saying it's inevitable that we go down. Couple of things from me on that, and I said it at the time, we're 18 games in is one. Two, I think with a couple of signings in this window and whether we can do that business or not, I think that transforms, so to speak, the way that we could potentially play. Whether that's another matter, whether the club are capable of bringing them players in from a financial point of view, or whether we're capable of identifying them. But I think, the last part of the component, which we've mentioned on a number of occasions here and on the instant match, is the manager. I think there's a big call to make there. If you are backing that manager, and this is a message to the board, if you're backing that manager, you've got to back him. And by that, you've got to back him by bringing in players that he can work with, that can complement the group of players that we've got there. If you're not backing the manager, then you need to replace him as soon as possible with someone who can work with the resources that we've got at our disposal. Because I think one thing is for certain, Frank Lampard cannot work with this group of players and make them better than 3 or 4 other teams in the league. I'm fairly confident of that at this stage, having seen 18 games of this season and the end of last season.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
But look,
it's not. Just said before, I'd love nothing more than, I would have loved nothing more than Lampard to be a success. And I'm sure he might look at Marco Silva at Fulham, and everyone's going, we should have kept Marco Silva. Well, he's learned lessons, obviously, from being because he weren't doing well at Everton. I know. Yeah, there's the argument we could have kept him, but he's gone away. He's worked on. He's thought about what he's got wrong, and he's improved as a manager. Lampard might do that. Not to say that he's going to be a terrible. He is a terrible manager. He's not going to be a success as a manager. He might be. But at this moment in time for Everton and what we need, I just don't think as I said, it's a heavy heart saying it, but I just don't think he's got the tools to perform, to succeed.
No, I couldn't agree more with you. Listen, 50 minutes, the longest podcast we've done in quite some time. We felt it as well, to be fair, going through a lot of people's, digesting a lot of people's passionate opinions. And sorry if we didn't give any of you justice with your questions. It's a tough task, and again, we do appreciate everyone's comments. We try our best to get back to you, but hopefully displaying them that way encourages more of you to comment, because this is, it'd be a very, very boring podcast if we didn't have feedback from people, or it would get very, very samey listening to me, Pricey and Millsy all the time. Thanks for all your support as usual. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It makes a massive difference to us. We've seen it go over 2,000 this weekend. We've had loads of new subscribers, but it does make a difference to the content we can put out there, the capabilities we've got as a channel, the more followers we get. And it obviously allows us to interact with you. One thing we are bringing in the future is we're going to send some content out a little bit earlier to our subscribers. So you might get it 24 hours, 48 hours earlier. It's not going to be behind a paywall. It's not going to cost you anything. Just by clicking that button, subscribe, you'll get some content a little bit earlier than others. So hopefully that convinces a few to do so. But again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following. Please do tune in to the next few shows, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.